17 stages still between now and then, starting with a hard day's climbing in Navarra. Stage 2 sets out from Pamplona with 2 third-category climbs leading to the main feature of the day, the Alto de San Miguel de Aralar. 9 kilometres long, 1,200 metres high, and partly surfaced in concrete just to up the degree of difficulty. From the top, it's 17 fast kilometres downhill to the finish in lekunberri, so gaps at the top could well stick.
"20 kilometres to go for Luis Leon Sanchez, and they're coming back. It's been tough. He built his lead up to around about 25 seconds, but over the course of the last half a kilometre or so, just that relentless pace being set by Movistar is starting to hurt Luis Leon Sanchez, who got away explosively, seemed to pick his moment correctly, probably did ultimately, but the race is developing differently behind him, and that group's getting very small indeed. Worth noting, it doesn't contain, never has actually contained, Chris Froome. Once again, a little bit of weakness from him today, as you might expect. He didn't actually make it to the foot of the climb to contend today's. He was already distanced before they got to the climb today. Alexander Vlasov, who got dropped, he was one of the big favourites to get dropped early on yesterday. He's just succumbed now to the pressure being exerted by Movistar, now with 3 riders still in contention at the front.
Yeah, I mean, this is an amazing ride. Firstly, by Luis Leon Sanchez here, just forcing it and taking his chance, and it was the right chance to take. But you can see Movistar are not letting go today. They're going to do this. They're dedicating everything. Dan Martin there, we can just see him just behind. We've got Chavez, we've got Mikel Nieve there, who's the yellow shoulders, just behind Dan Martin. You've got Carapaz, who has been caught. There he is in the pink. We've got Hugh Carthy. These are the riders that are already on stage 2 of the Vuelta a España showing. Rio Costa there, that's a Portuguese national champion, number 22, just there. But it goes to show there are some great riders who are being dropped and distanced. But I think the race is happening.
Mitchelton Scott still with 2, still with Esteban Chavez and Mikel Nieve in that group. Hugh Carthy is still there. So too is Davide Formulo. Marc Soler just driving it on now towards the top of this climb. Little flatter section. Luis Leon Sanchez is caught as if he'd never attacked in the first place. Movistar just sweep past him onto wet roads now. So a downpour has passed through over the top of this hill, and that spells ill or potentially perilous conditions for the descent to come.
As you said before, Ned, we're not quite sure whether it was a team play or an individual play from Luis Leon Sanchez. And as I see his team leader back here, one of his team leaders is, I think he was going for the stage win, but the way that Movistar are riding, we're seeing on stage 2 of the Vuelta a España a GC race dictating the tactics, and that very rarely happens.
Look at that climb. Well, they always say, don't they, there's a received wisdom that the straighter the climb, the more it hurts, and they don't come much straighter or steeper than that. Towards the top of this climb, it's unrelenting.
Movistar, they won't let go. They know they're committed to this. They're in the white jersey, is Enric Mas. They have absolute confidence in his ability to deliver today.
Look at the wind just battering the side of the mountain as well, blowing those barriers. On the right-hand side of the road as David de la Cruz watches the race go away from him. Mikel Nieve, the next one to succumb. That's Luis Leon Sanchez, I think, who's dropping through, as you just alluded to. In front of him, Kenny Elissonde, little French climber from Trek Segafredo. Then comes Davide Formulo. Andrea Baggioli is the rider from De Koning Quickstep. Hugh Carthy still looking very good, responding to the repositioning move of Richard Carapaz in the green jersey. But this is the damage that's being done, and these are proper riders. Former world champion going out here. Alexander Vlasov, one of the most exciting talents in the World Tour peloton, bar none, not having the best start to his Vuelta and dropping away. Up on the right-hand side of the road is Sepp Kuss, and Richard Carapaz going with him. So, what does that mean? Carapaz, the fact that Carapaz has responded instantly to Sepp Kuss there is probably not ideal for Jumbo-Visma, who would have wanted Sepp Kuss to gain a bit of distance and force other teams to chase. So Sepp Kuss quite rightly sits up and watches to see what comes next. But that was neutralised by that immediate reaction from Richard Carapaz.
Yeah, and you do see how Movistar are still just controlling this. They're still determined to stick by their tactic. And I think the reason for that attack from Sepp Kuss was to disrupt it, to try and dislodge the helpers, the teammates. It hasn't worked.
Well, it's a frighteningly strong ride from Marc Soler. Extremely good ride from him. And Alejandro Valverde's looking very good as well, isn't he?
9 riders left in that group now.
George Bennett's gone.
Yeah. This is stage 2 of the... There he is, in the red jersey. Just again, like yesterday, He's now in the last 3 of that group of 9 riders. Just absolute confidence. There he is, George Bennett, as you referenced, just behind. His 2 teammates are no longer in yellow jerseys. One's in the best climber, one is in the leader's jersey. That's the power of Jumbo-Visma, if you like. But right now it's Movistar who are dominating this group.
Another exciting rider to look out for, Andrea Baggioli. I don't think these long climbs suit him really, but when we come to the shorter, sharper finishes, he'll be right in contention.
Ned, just to reference that he's dropped back. Sepp Kuss is talking to Primoz Roglic. So he's gone back, and just back then he just dropped back and he's asking him, and I'm pretty sure he'll be asking, what do you want me to do?
We've seen that before, haven't we? We saw that at the Tour, the communication between those two.
Yeah, and he's just gone back, and that's those two. They're building such an amazing relationship regards how they race, and I'm reasonably sure Sepp Kuss has just taken. Primoz Roglic will decide what Sepp Kuss does next.
Look at this. All these great riders out of the saddle now, and Richard Carapaz going towards the top now, not far before the top of the climb, and Richard Carapaz wants to take an advantage over the climb, and Alejandro Valverde it is now, as Marc Soler's put into difficulties, just marks that move.
Yeah, and Valverde, Mr. Consistent, after 2 decades of being Mr. Consistent, is there, just marking Carapaz for the greater purpose. Dan Martin always there, present. Now let's say the red jersey is there in 5th position. Yep. Sepp Kuss there, the best climber, the blue dots and the blue polka dot. And now we're getting down to the absolute death throes of what that group is.
Well, incidentally, his 3rd place over the top of that climb gives Sepp Kuss the jersey, the Mountains jersey, for another day, but there's much more in play than that today. Once again, the general classification is up for grabs today, and the red leader's jersey most definitely in play, but so too is a stage win, and a very elite group of riders getting over the top of this climb and lining themselves up for the descent are going to contest it. Last 16 kilometres of this fascinating stage in Navarro now, as Richard Carapaz, who spent 3 formative years racing down this very descent, day in, day out, knows these roads better than anyone, including the Movistar riders who have grown up to some extent in this region too. And really it's been a case of Carapaz and Movistar bossing this race. Movistar still have a couple of riders, most notably Enric Mas and Alejandro Valverde towards the front. That's the selection there. Hugh Carthy just battling to get back on terms, and this group might swell on the descent a little bit.
Yeah, I think it will. Look at that, 1, 2, 3, 8 riders left now. So we're down to the very essence of what this bike race potentially could be for the next 3 weeks. These are the best, the strongest riders. Now it's quite rare to see this on stage 2 of a Grand Tour, but that's the very nature of this year's Vuelta a España. And this is the chasing group coming back on, but you have to ask your question, although they will. You'd think the way the front is slowing down, make it back on, will they be able to actually make a difference in the final? I don't think so. As another group, that's Carapaz again.
Soler is going right over the top. Straight over the top, Marc Soler, back from the dead and shooting past the group of favourites and into a commanding little advantage on the road as the favourites, if you like, look at each other. And that's not a bad move for Movistar as well, because he can sit up, be there, present at the front of the race, and can be come into play later, perhaps as a lead-out man for Mas or indeed Alejandro Valverde when you're thinking in terms of the stage victory. So Movistar have, because of what they've done and the strength of numbers and the way they've whittled the race down, David, they've got all sorts of really quite nuanced tactical decisions to make on the fly now, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was Carapaz flying through, but you're right, it's Soler. And Soler, he's done so much work, but at the same time, he's still got 2 teammates behind. And that's where, now that Sepp Kuss, it's hard to see. They have to chase him down.
Yes,
there are 2 Movistar riders in that group who now their job is to mark, because Soler is chasing the stage win. So you've got Valverde and Enric Mas. So that's 3 out of those 7, 8 riders left are teammates of Soler. So Soler's here, he's got 2 teammates behind. So Sepp Kuss has to chase this down, has to try. Now, George Bennett we saw before, number 2, the Jumbo-Visma rider, tucked up, trying to catch back onto this group. And that little group needs him to get back on there to help chase him down. So we've moved into a heavily team tactical race right now.
Brilliant to watch. David, flashback to last year at the Vuelta and Marc Soler off the front and attacking.
George Bennett.
There we go. George Bennett's got it getting back on, yeah.
And he's got to go straight to the front, and he's got to just chase that down.
Hold that thought about Marc Soler, but George Bennett is off the front now, and he's reacted to by Alejandro Valverde and Richard Carapaz and Primoz Roglic. There's the white jersey of Enric Mas, and now George Bennett has to try and get across this 10-second gap to Marc Soler.
So see the way he looks over his shoulder. He wants to make sure he's not attacking. He wants to make sure the other riders are on his wheel. And he wants to make sure everybody's there, because his only job now is to close that gap to Marc Soler. But that's useless unless that group is latched to his wheel. So he wouldn't start riding until he was absolutely sure that everybody was latched on his wheel.
That's his job. Clearly defined. Valverde, Carapaz, Roglic, Sepp Kuss in the Mountains jersey, which he'll be wearing again tomorrow as a little bit of wildlife gets involved in the race. Beautiful, but perhaps unwanted, certainly for Mikel Nieve there in their Mitchelton Scott colours. This is the chase group on the road. They're not 11 seconds. That's the gap between Marc Soler and the red jersey. That group's out of sight at the moment.
A little bit there they are. Whereas the wildlife, as you said. Adorable little horses.
Ooh.
Probably not the right time to getting mixed up in a bike race, but
they're not to know, though, are they? In fairness,
no. That takes quacking to a whole new level.
The rain starts to fall. Marc Soler has an 18-second advantage and 5.3 kilometres to go to get to the finish line. It's mostly downhill. The road then flattens out. And contained within the final 5 kilometres, there are one or two little climbs. As you can see now, the road just rising a little bit. So the majority of the descent is done, and Marc Soler's made it pay. George Bennett getting on the front for Jumbo-Visma to try and bring the flying Spaniard back from Movistar, and so far to no avail. 5 kilometres to go for Marc Soler, who has never tasted victory in a Grand Tour stage yet. Which is a remarkable thing to say for this fantastically talented 26-year-old who is often dedicated to the service of his team leaders, happily or unhappily. Well, on this occasion, it's a very happy outcome. And now Jumbo-Visma, David, are sending all their troops onto the front. Sepp Kuss, George Bennett, Primoz Roglic. You can hear the howl of the brakes as they go round that corner. Alejandro Valverde and Enric Mas are there. Richard Carapaz, Primoz Roglic, Dan Martin, Hugh Carthy, and that's it. That is the selection. 4.4k to go. Still chasing Soler. I think they're already thinking about second place, David. I think it's gone. What's the gap? Let's see if the timings will inform us any better when we next get them back. But Marc Soler's holding nothing back here.
Yeah, look at this. This is Formolo now, who yesterday we were hoping would be one of the riders. Who was a key player in this race, and now he's slipped back to help her. And there's Rio Costa, who's a little bit further back. We can't quite see him because he's not quite in the same colour jersey, but he's there. And meanwhile, beyond Group 3, you have Group 2, and Group 2 is where all the hitters, the leaders are, the hopefuls for this race. But I think Soler has this wrapped, and here he is. 2.2k's to go. I can't see how they're going to bring him back now.
Well, we don't know what the time gaps are, but last time we had a time check, it was around about 18 seconds, and unless something miraculous has happened, albeit Jumbo-Visma are throwing the kitchen sink at this with Bennett and Kuss. Kuss doing most of the pace setting, then comes Valverde. Enric Mas has dropped down onto the wheel of Primoz Roglic. That might be significant, no longer riding on Alejandro Valverde's wheel, but keeping an eye on the red jersey. Carapaz, watch out for him. He's got potentially the most to gain here, but so too is Roglic, who could extend his advantage over all of them if he were to win the sprint here for second place, or even better, if they can catch Soler.
Look at him
23 seconds, we understand. That's the gap now, so Soler surely has this in the bag. Just has to stay upright, and then he can win the best way of all, which is on his own. Looks back, perhaps he doesn't know.
He's just checking this. We saw this at Tour de France with Sancraig Addison. It was sometimes we take for granted when we're watching from a distance like this, is they actually have a lot less information than we do. So as far as he knows, they could be 200 meters behind, 300 meters, because the rule is when you're off the front like this, you don't look back. And 1 kilometer to go, he will perhaps, I think if he gets a bit further on, have the courage to look back and see whether he's got this or not.
Well, he's fueled by adrenaline right now, Marc Soler, because he's on the cusp of achieving something he's never done before. Not just taking a Grand Tour stage win, but taking it in his home country of Spain, wearing essentially the national team colours of Spain, riding for Movistar on the day in which the race left Eguez, the suburb of Pamplona that they call home. They would have dreamt of a victory here, and they're going to get one too in Marc Soler. 26 years of age, this rider. And forget all the histrionics of last year where it all backfired for Movistar. This, rather than a wave of the arm in frustration at team orders, is a punch of the air in delight. He confirms what's happening on the radio. He can sit up, coast home, and at the end of the day, also as a handy byproduct of this, he can reflect on an improved standing in the general classification and could yet be a player as the 3 weeks unfold. But for now, this is quite simply a victory. He's doing it on his own. The winner of the Tour de l'Avenir back in 2015, Paris-Nice in 2018, finally tastes victory at the Vuelta a España. Marc Soler has done it with an audacious solo attack to which nobody had an answer. And here comes the battle for second place. 10-second time bonus has been swallowed up by Marc Soler as Primož Roglic hits the front with Dan Martin trying to get on the wheel of the Slovenian, closing the gap, but no one can match Roglic. Roglic extends his lead in the general classification. Martin picks up third place and a handy 4-second time bonus, and that will push him above Richard Carapaz and into second in the general classification at the end of the day. But Marc Soler has done it, and Movistar have done it, and they took the race to everybody today, and they came away with a tremendous reward. And along the way, they distanced some more riders in the general classification. You have to say, David, that was job done in style today by Movistar.
And here we go. This is it. It's not just job well done, it's years of work. And hats off to Marc Soler. This is what every rider dreams of, winning on the biggest stage in your home country, and he's done it, and he deserves it.
Marc Soler had 19 seconds on the line over the red jersey group, which was immaterial to his stage win, but with the 10-second bonus gave him a handy bump up in the overall standings. Primož Roglic picked up another couple of bonus seconds on Dan Martin, but Martin picked up 4 on Richard Carapaz, who was out of the placings. Andrea Baggioli, 10th overall this morning, was 11th, just ahead of a 13-man chasing group that also included Felix Großschartner. And behind them, the gaps grew in a field that had been fatigued and fragmented by the work of Movistar, who ended a drought stretching back to last August.
Well, Carlos, it's been a very long wait for Movistar since your last win and your last World Tour win at the Vuelta last year. I mean, how does it feel? How satisfying is it?
Yeah, I think to win today has been great. No, for us it hasn't been an easy year. We have had a lot of changes in the team, and all the changes takes time. And luckily today we could win. I think from the Tour we are always growing up, our condition and also our confidence. And finally today we did our first win since February and World Tour since last year. And I think this is a boost of confidence for the rest of la Vuelta, where we hope to finish in our best way.
Sí, la verdad que sí, estamos muy motivados por el hecho de correr en casa, nos conocíamos el terreno, ya teníamos la idea desde salida de arriba de Urbasa empezar a apretar y ha salido todo redondo. Nos hemos puesto allí, luego por el llano con los compañeros, luego Carlos ha empezado el puerto a un muy buen ritmo y yo he podido continuar, me he descolgado arriba y venía al doble de velocidad. Tenía que entrar a trabajar para Alejandro y Enric para ver si Alejandro podía buscar aquí la victoria, y al ir al doble no he frenado, he continuado para adelante y hasta meta.
Movistar actually only have 2 wins of any sort this year, and Marc Soler is responsible for both of them. Primož Roglic extended his lead over Richard Carapaz and Dan Martin in the points competition, although that's very much a sideshow to the red jersey race at the moment. And with his brief attack on the Auto de San Miguel, Carapaz took the mountains jersey from Sepp Kuss, the man who stopped him getting away to take time as well.
No, bueno, sí, al final no, ha sido una carrera muy nerviosa, ¿no? De cara al final al acercamiento a San Miguel había mucho viento cruzado y bueno, no, yo creo que por parte del equipo hemos hecho un gran trabajo y bueno, de cara al final pues se ha jugado la etapa ahí, ¿no? Un poco decisivo, ¿no? Pero bueno, muy contento por el rendimiento porque sabemos que quedan etapas muy decisivas aún y sobre todo que la vuelta acaba de arrancar.
Enric Mas extended his lead in the white jersey competition today, while demonstrating that he and his team are also a force to be reckoned with overall. He's up to 5th at Felix Großschartner's expense, with Marc Soler moving into the top 10 as Andrea Baggioli drops out. Dan Martin overtakes Richard Carapaz to move into 2nd place, behind Primož Roglic, who for the second day running was first among equals as far as the favourites are concerned.
At the end, nice result. Was again a hard day, nervous because of the wind and a hard climb at the end, but our team did again a good job with controlling the whole day, and then they keep me on the right position, and on the climb was really a hard pace. At the end, Soler went away. He was then he deserved to win. And so far so good, and we go on.